Hello everyone and welcome to Don't Be Bored. Today I'm joined by Mark, the designer of City of Myrkesh, a brand new deck building game where you're going to be fighting a monster and gaining allies from 5 different districts. So welcome Mark, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the game.
Hi, I'm Mark Wilson. I come from a 3D artist background in game dev. That's what I do as a profession, but I wanted to expand my umbrella of expertise. So while being a 3D artist, I've been designing a board game for the last 2.5 years. I got into board games around 2012. I picked up my first box of Ascension, designed by Justin Gary. I actually got to meet him this last Gen Con a few months ago. It was like my game design idol moment. A lot of my games on my shelf are deck builders, and him and his creation is what made me fall in love with the genre, so I decided I'm going to design my own.
So this being your design, what did you go into the game to try and be different from other games?
I wanted to answer 2 questions with that design, though. One question: how do I make players have access to every strategy at once? In a typical deck building game, you have 5 to 6 card markets, depending on if you're Star Realms or if you're the other ones. And whatever's in that market is what a player has access to. If they like doing strategy A, for example, and strategy B and C are the only things out, you're kind of at the whim of what's in the market. With my game, I made a 10-card market, and 2 cards from each strategy are always available on the board. 2 Merchant's Row cards, 2 Wilds, 2 Royal Courts, 2 Industrial Grounds, and 2 Undercity cards. But depending on where your player piece is positioned in the city, will give you access to 2 pairings of cards at a time. My second question I wanted to resolve is, how do you remove the side market? Playing deck building games for the last decade, I've noticed that side markets are a group of cards that are like default actions where a player, if like all the cards in the market are really expensive, then you can always buy a card from the side market. There's always cheap cards over there you can get to build up your deck. Or if there's no enemies to fight in the market, there's usually a dummy enemy in the side market you can attack and get points from. That might not be an issue to some people, but for me, I felt like I could try to solve that. So by making each deck, every district has a 16-card deck, and within these 16 cards are different cards of different costs. You have some 1s, a lot of 2s, a lot of 3s, some 4s, 1 5, and 1 6. So as you shuffle this deck and deal it out into the 10-card market, some cards are going to be cheaper. You're more likely to see cheaper cards. There might be a possibility you might run into some expensive cards, but with 5 decks being shuffled up and dealt out, there has to be a district with some cheaper average cost cards. So that's how I solved removing the side market.
I think that's really cool that you've taken something that's almost seen as a bit of a standard with deck builders and have sort of tried to iterate on that. I really like that. You did mention that something that's also different is the 5 different districts. Could you tell us how those differ, please?
Each district has a mechanical identity behind them. Merchant's Row, we'll start with, generates coin, generates bonuses if you buy certain cards, lets you rush cards to the top of your deck instead of the discard pile. You can get access to them sooner. And they also allow you to buy cards from other players' spaces instead of just your own. Wilds is all about power. Generate bonuses by attacking for a certain amount of damage. They let you ignore rubble. You might even generate discounts depending on how much damage you deal. And they also allow you to get rid of the dead cards, the wound cards you receive from the monster. Get rid of them faster. Royal Courts is a bit of a mix of the last 2. They generate power, they generate coin. They also have a little bit of a controlling aspect where they will give tax tokens to your players, give tax tokens to your opponents to slow down their coin generation. They'll maybe force an opponent to discard a card and give you a bonus depending on what card it is. They can also protect themselves from disruption. They can generate shields, which will prevent an opponent from targeting you one time. And also, when you attack the monster, you generate prestige. It's the victory points in the game. Royal Courts doesn't need to dirty their hands with fighting, so they get what's called noble prestige, which is almost the same as normal prestige, but they can just generate it. They don't need to attack. They already have the nobility about them. Undercity is all about gaining extra speed. If you don't want to play your card sideways to gain movement, like the normal mechanic, peasants have no text on them. They teach you to play a card sideways to generate some value from them. Undercity can just do that. They will generate a ton of speed. They will generate abilities that allow you to convert speed into either coin or power. They allow you to possess, which they have a few ghosts in their district, so they can possess other players to attack from their spaces. They can slander your opponents, which means they give away their points to you. You can steal their points. And they can also Undercity can also use the revolt mechanic to steal cards from other players' decks. You can recruit them to your side as if their discard pile was part of the market. And then lastly, Industrial Grounds. Industrial Grounds is your card draw faction. If you want to draw cards better than anyone else, every district in some way has some form of card draw, but Industrial Grounds has the best card draw. They also have the most cards that are modal. Modal meaning you have 2 modes on a card, you can choose one or the other, depending on what the circumstance situation calls for. So yeah, that's how I made each district feel mechanically unique, and that's how I made every district have strengths and weaknesses like that.
It certainly sounds like those districts do give different options to the players, but what would you say your favourite strategy is?
My favorite strategy has to be Industrial Grounds. I value card draw a lot. So I saw this really when I was playtesting the game, and I had a friend who had never touched the game before. She, on her first turn, bought a really good Undercity card. And for the rest of the game after that point, just bought Industrial Grounds cards. She was able to draw into that really good Undercity card every other turn, and she steamrolled the game, and it was fantastic. Awesome display of the power of card draw.
I do love the fact that one of your favourite parts and memories of the game is actually being steamrolled. That's quite fun. But what would you say, during that sort of design playtest phase, what's been the best and the worst parts?
Best part was building each faction to have a building each district to have a unique feel. Each district has their own strengths and weaknesses, and within the 16 cards of each district, you should be able to see what, for example, Wilds can do and what Wilds can't do, or what Undercity does well, but may not do as well as another district. And combining these districts in your deck to balance their strengths and weaknesses is really what gives this my feeling of the best part of designing this game. And the worst part was designing Industrial Grounds. Card draw is very tricky to get right, and depending on how your game is structured, you can value card draw higher or lower or mid. If you've got a card on the curve that draws you 1 card, and it draws you the best card in your game, that's a really above the curve moment. If it draws you the worst card in the game, like a peasant, that's really below the curve. So balancing card draw, I had to make sure that it stayed within the medium of that slope of, what's the cost of the card and how many cards would it draw you.
That must have taken quite a bit of balancing. What sort of was that final part when it sort of locked in the design and you were like, this is done?
I feel like I'm going to backtrack a little bit, but when every district had a mechanical identity that made them feel unique, and every card in the deck of that district felt balanced, a 1-cost card, it doesn't do as much as a 5-cost card. And making sure each card did enough to compensate its cost is how I felt the game was to the point where I felt it was finished.
Where can people find out more about the city of Myrkesh?
So currently we are on Kickstarter. We are going for a month. We started on October 24th, and we will go until November 24th. We're about half funded as of recording. I'm recording this on the night of October 30th. So I hope more people come along and see the world I've built within this game, and, if you like deck builders, you're welcome to come along.
And the last question, one for a little bit of fun. What game would you say has the best meeple in it?
It was a game on my honeymoon I played. We were on our honeymoon for about a week, me and my wife, and we went to a game store in the local town we were staying in, and I picked up a game called Silk. And this is where you cattle silkworms, and you make sure they eat enough grass, and if they eat the grass, the right grass, you get more points. But they have these tiny little meeples that are super cute, and you just push them across this little 4x4 or 5x5 grid, depending on how many players there are, and they're super cute. So my answer's got to be the silkworms from the game Silk.
Thank you very much, Mark, for joining me and answering the questions today. If you want to go and check out a little bit more about City of Myrkesh, the link to the Kickstarter will be in the description box downstairs. And until next time, have a fantastic day gaming.